Hey guys, how are you all doing? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got second chance to live, but in Ponies world, Naruto x Twilight Sparkle, part 1. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, DragonLS, link is in the description, also subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. O land of the rising sun, land of the leaves, O land of nature. Why did this happen? Please don't let this situation get any worse for our friendly neighborhood knucklehead, Naruto. Our orange and black-jacketed, blonde genin was currently slamming his head into a nearby wooden fence repeatedly. As he continued to bore his way into the wood, he started to wonder why he was even doing so in the first place. He stopped momentarily to ponder this, rubbing his now throbbing forehead under his Konoha headband. His thoughts, still a tangled mess, unraveled temporarily to inform him of just why he was assaulting the fence. It involved him banging his head repeatedly once again with a renewed vigor as he recalled the events. It wasn't that long ago, 15 minutes to be exact. It was mid-afternoon in the breezy town of Konohagakure, and Naruto had a plan. A prank. A devious excuse to laugh his ass off. He had just gotten back from a rescue mission involving Gaara and needed a way to rid himself of stress. What better way to kill said stress and time between missions than to make someone's life a living pain for a few minutes? It was a simple plan really. Naruto was out in an alleyway, a path frequently taken when one needed to go to the Hokage Tower. He had a cardboard box on his head emblazoned with "Please open me" on the front in big bold kanji and a couple of innocent looking pellets. Why was the cardboard box on his head? It could have been because he wanted to be stealthy. It could have been because he could talk to boxes in some dead language that only he knew. Or he was just an idiot to begin with. Regardless, Naruto took the box off his head and set it upright with the pellet still in his hand. He brought the pellets into the sunlight in order to inspect his guaranteed success of laughing the day away. A red and blue pellet, each polished to a glossy finish, were necessary for this devious prank to work. "Ain't pellets," Naruto muttered mostly to himself, "this is going to be funny as hell." Naruto took a deep breath and began to push some of his chakra into his right hand, the one holding the pellets. As he infused the pellets with some of his chakra, he immediately placed them inside the box and closed it up, making sure no sunlight would reach inside, unless someone were to open it of course. As Naruto looked around for anybody walking up the alley, he set the box in the middle of the road, being careful as to not agitate the contents any further. Then, he dashed behind a nearby trash can, giggling like a little schoolgirl. 5 minutes had passed, and not a single person had come down the alley. Not a soul, not a creature, not a single one. Naruto peeked out from behind the trash can. No footsteps, no whistling, no talking, just utter silence. Naruto crossed his arms, thinking. I could have sworn this was the busiest road. It's the fastest way to the tower, right? He questioned himself. As he began to ponder just how strange this was, he heard footsteps approaching. He dove back down behind the trash can more out of reflex than anything else. He didn't even see who was coming up the road, but he couldn't peek out and risk being seen. He had put more time into this prank than any other before, and he wasn't about to blow it. Naruto was silently giggling to himself, waiting for the inevitable. The footsteps grew ever closer. They immediately stopped, maybe no more than 10 feet away. Naruto assumed that whoever it was just stumbled across his present. Hook, line, and sinker. Hehe, Naruto said to himself quietly. His face sported a devilish grin of delight. What he heard next took that grin right off his face and uppercut it straight off into next year. Oh my. What's this box doing here? I wonder what's inside, said a familiar feminine voice. Naruto swallowed his Adam's apple, forcing its way down into his chest, knowing who that voice belonged to. Immediately, he jumped out from behind his hiding place wide-eyed, watching a familiar raven-haired girl with white pupils crouch over the box. The girl already had one of her hands spreading open the folds of the box when Naruto finally found his voice. Hinata, don't op. But it was too late. As soon as she opened up the flaps completely and looked up, the box exploded. Blue and red smoke flooded the area after the explosion, billowing out from where the box and Hinata had been. The smoke slowly started to dissipate after a few short seconds, which seemed to last an eternity for Naruto until Hinata came into view. The look on her face was that of an injured puppy. Mouth agape and eyes wide open in blatant shock. She stood there with blue and red markings all over her clothes, her face, and even her hair, creating what seemed like an art experiment gone wrong. Hinata looked at her hands, shaking, as the red and blue paint dripped off her and mixed together into a purple concoction. Naruto took a step forward towards Hinata, trying to utter something, anything, but couldn't bring himself to. Hinata slowly looked up towards Naruto, eyes twitching on the brink of tears as she slowly backed away. Step by step, she backed away, each step bringing her closer to a full breakdown until the third step back. With tears coming out of her eyes, she turned around and ran away. Naruto took another step forward, raising his hand in front of him as if he was about to grab something. "Hinata? Wait. This is all a big misunderstanding," Naruto shouted. But his words fell on deaf ears as she rounded the corner and fell out of his line of sight. His shoulders slumped down as he turned to orient himself to the wooden fence running along the alleyway and began smacking his head into it over and over again. Which brings us back to where Naruto is now, contemplating just why he went ahead with this prank to begin with. A good prank is fine once in a while, but if it involves your dear and trusted friends, especially someone as sensitive as Hinata, it turns into a very cruel joke. Many thoughts were running through Naruto's thick skull as he kept running through the situation repeatedly. Why did I do that just now? Can I reverse it? Why can't anyone take a joke and forgive you? The fight between the fence and a hard head wasn't making any notable progress. Would Hinata hate him after this stupid prank? Why didn't he chase after Hinata after she ran off crying? Was it because he didn't want to rub salt in an open wound? Or is it because he didn't want to make it worse with excuses that she wouldn't believe? Several similar thoughts flooded his mind, but none of them gave him an answer. As he kept up the valiant effort against the fence, a man walked by, sporting a straw Japanese hat that kept his entire head out of the sun and wearing nothing but a black and silver Japanese robe. Attached to his belt was an assortment of small oddities, such as a couple of brown pouches, each a different size, a couple of bottles of strange liquid, and even an assortment of small needles. The man seemed to have long black hair wrapped in a ponytail, as well as the face of an innocent and kind man. He saw the young blonde banging his head over and over into the fence, muttering how he's hated and unwanted. He raised his brow and walked up behind the kid. "You'll get brain damage if you keep that up, young one," the ponytail man said. Naruto stopped banging his head against the wall and turned around quickly, flinching when he saw a man standing no less than a foot away from him. The blonde took a deep breath, leaned against the small cratered wall, and stared back at him. "Maybe I should get it after what I did. What I did was unforgivable." "So you accidentally pranked a close friend of yours, I'm starting to understand why you were leaving a dent in that wall." The man felt sorry for the way Naruto was treating himself earlier, so he took Naruto to Ichiraku's. Ichiraku's ramen, as Naruto had claimed, was the best place in all of Konohagakure, no, the world, for ramen. As Naruto stuffed his face, he nodded a couple of times towards the man. "If painful," Naruto said with his mouth full, splattering beef broth and noodles across the table. The man blinked. A bead of sweat made its way down his face before he snapped out of his stupor. "Swallow your food, please." "That's just plain rude," the man said, as Naruto swallowed the face full of food in just one gulp. "You're a prankster?" the man asked. Naruto simply nodded as he faked a smile. "The best prankster in all of Konoha. No one can match my talents," he said proudly. Naruto paused, suddenly realizing he was both talking and eating with some foreign stranger. Better yet, he didn't even know his name. "I'm Naruto, by the way. What's yours?" The man only smirked at Naruto's sudden urge to be courteous. He only shrugged in response. "Yajirobe. Samurai by name and alchemist by trade," Yajirobe said proudly to Naruto. Naruto tilted his head at the last idol he called himself, alchemist. Yajirobe nodded, tilting his straw hat forward. "Indeed, an alchemist, a person who can create tonics, remedies, or, as you folk commonly say, people who can turn lead into gold." Yajirobe broke out into a full-bodied laugh at the last comment he made. Of course, turning lead into gold is a bit of a ridiculous fairy tale, since it isn't even possible. Naruto owed to the small, but simple explanation of what an alchemist was. The small bottles of liquid on Yajirobe's belt caught his eye, curious about what they contained. "An alchemist, huh? So you can create things like food pellets and soldier pills or something?" Yajirobe only laughed at Naruto's comment. "Something like that. Alchemy can be used in all sorts of ways, it's nearly endless," he said with an arm leaning on the table, smiling at Naruto. "You could create a tonic to boost your strength, a tonic to make you immune to disease, or even create an explosive that can burst into flames upon impact. Alchemists have been around for centuries, my friend. Most of the things you take for granted were created and improved upon by others like me." The more Yajirobe explained to Naruto about his profession, the more he became curious about this alchemist thing. "Can it be used for pranks?" Naruto asked. Once again the man broke out into a laugh. "I knew you were going to say that, haha." Yajirobe took a few ryo out of his pocket and placed them on the table to pay the bill. Yajirobe stood up from the table and motioned for Naruto to follow. "Come, I shall explain more as we walk. I have nothing else to do at the moment." Naruto got up with Yajirobe and began his trek towards the crowded marketplace. Several people rushed by, going from one place to another, while merchants kept advertising how their goods are better and more reasonably priced than others. It was noisy, but he could still hear Yajirobe speak clearly. Like I said, it can be used for numerous things, including pranks. Fire bombs, for example, can be multi-purposed. You could even make something that spouts out tar, mud, or even water, but then again, water in a bottle would just have the same effect as regular old water, haha. The joke fell a little flat for Naruto, since it didn't really make that much sense. Yajirobe looked at Naruto for a moment, forcing a cough before continuing. So in short, yes. Alchemy can be used for pranks, or to help for the greater good, haha. Naruto couldn't help but smile at Yajirobe's words. Learning alchemy is the only thing Naruto wanted to think about right now. Oh. Can you teach me how to use alchemy? Naruto said while hopping up and down like a little schoolgirl. Yajirobe stopped, shaking his head and dashing Naruto's high hopes. A smile graced Yajirobe's face and he tousled up the blonde's messed up hair some more. I'm only here in Konoha for one more day. However, you should read up on alchemy if you wish to learn. It is not that difficult and I'm sure you'll have a knack for it, if he said, as he placed a finger on Naruto's headband. You have the persistence, patience, and motivation for it. You seem to have everything nailed down, but the patience aspect. Just remember that good things come to those who wait. He stressed the last word by flicking Naruto's headband. Naruto immediately nodded, more out of reflex than complete understanding. Alchemy, the art of turning lead into gold, of combining ingredients or other such objects into one entity. It sounded magical and endless. Yajirobe couldn't help but laugh once more at Naruto's look of bewilderment and excitement. He took a small flask, in the shape of a small beaker, from his belt and grabbed a bigger bottle full of brown liquid from his carrying sack. Naruto raised an eyebrow at what he was doing, but the samurai alchemist only smiled in reply. I'd like to give you a parting gift. A memento, if you will, of this conversation we've had. He poured what was in the bottle into the beaker, like a faucet filling up a small cup, which is a potion that I've used countless times before for all those sleepless nights. It's a vitamin potion. Drink it before you sleep tonight. It'll give you the necessary nutrients and vitamins you need for a young man like yourself to stay healthy. It will even boost your mental prowess overnight, allowing you to think harder, but much more easily and quickly. I take it every day, and it's made me into what I am now, Yajirobe said with a smile and a twitch of the brow. Naruto went wide-eyed at his explanation and stared at the brown liquid inside the beaker. He couldn't believe what his ears were telling him. A potion could make him faster, stronger, and better than ever before, with almost no effort at his part. The thoughts of his future self plastered a grin all over his face. He looked back at Yajirobe in awe. Wow, Yajirobe, are you sure this must have taken a long time to create? Yajirobe gave a small chuckle at Naruto's response. The tonic is easy to make and it's my own special recipe. Don't worry about it. I've got a big bottle full of it, so I'm in no danger of running out anytime soon, Yajirobe said with a smile. He furrowed his brow at the setting sun, looking back at Naruto with his smile still. My, time flies when you're walking around town, it seems, he said, as he crossed his arms, with his eyes closed, as he nodded. He opened them once more and said, it seems our time was short but pleasant at that. I will be departing at first light tomorrow. Naruto looked up with a pair of puppy dog eyes towards Yajirobe. But Yajirobe, can't you stay in town for at least a couple more days? Yajirobe only shook his head at this comment, causing Naruto to frown. Then the samurai patted Naruto on the head once more. I hope to see you tomorrow then, Jana. Late at night. The moon cast its radiance all over Konoha, bathing the town in silver moonlight as the inhabitants slept, dreaming peaceful dreams. Some used the night to their advantage. To kill people in their sleep or go out and party all night long or stand guard and watch over towns to make sure that the peace is not disturbed. Naruto sat on his bed cross-legged, holding the bottle that Yajirobe handed him not long ago. He wore his usual nighttime pajamas with his signature black hat. The brown liquid inside sloshed around as he tilted the bottle in the moonlight coming through the window. It absorbed the light completely like a sponge, making it look even darker than it did before. Some kind of vitamin and mental prowess increased thingamabob, he said with one hand on his chin, looking at the contents. Alchemist sounds so amazing, I wonder if I could somehow learn it myself. All of the pranks I'd be able to pull. He could imagine it now. A concoction that could turn people into chickens or cows or even a bowl of ramen if he so chose. But those kinds of thoughts shook out of his head with a smirk and giggled. Yeah, right. As if alchemy could go that far. I really doubt it, but the thought still lingered in his head. So many possibilities, so many new prospects. He couldn't wait to know more. His eyelids became almost unbearably heavy as his fatigue began to catch up. A sideways glance at his bedside clock confirmed that it was indeed late. He shut the light off, plunging the room into semi-darkness, moonlight breaking up the darkness lightly. Naruto looked at the liquid inside the bottle once more, as if staring down an endless abyss of darkness. He shrugs to himself, popping the top off at the same time. The potion may have looked bland, but it sure didn't smell like it. "But Kami, this stuff reeks," Naruto said out loud. It seems that Yajirobe may have left out a major detail concerning the smell, or heck, maybe even what it tastes like. Why didn't he tell me this stuff would smell bad? Geez, do I really have to drink this? Naruto pondered this for a moment as he gave another whiff of the stuff. Well, it certainly didn't smell any better than before. But then again, some say the taste is different from the smell. He could just be exaggerating. Maybe it tasted like strawberries or melons, or maybe even pork ramen. His mouth twitched. That last line of thought made the mystery drink more appealing despite the smell. In the end, he manned up. Down the hatch. Placing his lips on the tip of the bottle, Naruto tipped the bottle up and slowly started to consume the brownish liquid, pinching his nose to keep the awful smell out. He blinked. It didn't taste that bad actually. It was almost like eating a potato, just in a liquefied form. A few seconds later, the entire bottle was drained and he threw it into the nearby trash bin. The smell still lingered, but at least it did taste better than it smelled. Feeling a bit satisfied it didn't make him throw up, he leapt into bed, the prospects of tomorrow all the brighter. 15 minutes later. Naruto woke up in a cold sweat. His throat was on fire. His stomach was doing belly flops in a pool of magma and his entire body ached in pain. Spasms rocked his entire body, pain tearing at every single molecule in his body both inside and out. Breathing was a whole other problem as he gripped his neck with his shaking hand, trying to get any air into his lungs. His heart thumped in his chest rapidly as his face lost color just as quickly. Even when he was experiencing an almost immeasurable amount of pain, his mind was racing through possible avenues of what in the world may be causing this. He rolled off the bed and onto the floor, curling into a ball, trying to fight through the pain. Naruto wheezed. Maybe it was something he ate. He opened his mouth and jabbed a finger at his tonsil before bending over and vomiting all over the wooden floorboards. One thing stood out as he emptied his stomach. Blood. That's when he knew it. He was dying. He didn't know why, but he was dying. He prayed that the fox inside his body would heal whatever was trying to kill him, however, the fox didn't seem to be helping at all. He couldn't even sense the fox or even hear anything. The room started to sway and spin in nauseating circles even though he wasn't moving. Even his arms and legs were starting to feel limp and cold. Naruto's movement slowed to a crawl. He couldn't move his legs anymore. His head was tilted away from the bed, looking out over the rest of his room. His Konoha forehead protector lay on the table, facing him, as if scolding him for doing something so rash and stupid. Naruto was laid out on the hardwood floor, limbs and organs no longer responsive, his eyes bloodshot and unfocused. Naruto was dead. Evil laughter could be heard in the distance. What Naruto's lifeless corpse didn't know was that there was a spectator in his midst, watching everything that happened. A man on a nearby rooftop sat quietly as he twiddled his fingers. "Foolish nine-tailed fox, I forgot to tell you one last thing about alchemy," the man in robes began as he stood up onto his 2 feet. "Is that it can also create the deadliest poisons known to man." He couldn't help but widely grinned at his accomplishment, disappearing off into the night. It was very cold. It felt like that of a blustery winter night. It went straight through your clothes and chilled you to the very bones. That's all he could feel. Naruto could feel himself floating. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, but merely floated in the endless abyss. He could still think, but all that came to mind was the cold. The damnable cold. All he knew was that he was floating in nothingness. He didn't care. Or at least, he couldn't, with all his feelings sucked away from him. He was a complete and utter nothing. At least, that's what he assumed until he stopped floating and fell onto something really hard. Suddenly, Naruto could think, feel, and even see. But he couldn't see himself. Try as he might, he couldn't see any limb or part of his body. All he could see was a trail of white where his feet should be. Naruto was confused at this turn of events. Where was he? Then, something happened. A brief flash of shadowy light exploded in front of Naruto. He couldn't squint, for he had no eyes, or eyelids for that matter. He just simply took in the sight for what it was, a black-robed thing. His robes were torn from place to place, with a black hood covering his face entirely. Bony fingers, bony feet, and a huge tome rested in his bony hands. If Naruto could piss himself in horror, he would, but he was still nothing but a bunch of white smoke. Stupid smoke. The bony, robed figure slowly walked towards Naruto, taking his book out from under his arm. He opened it absently, as if this was just a normal part of his day, and mumbled quietly to himself. Naruto letter N, yes, here we go. The bony figure said in a deep dark baritone voice. It would shake anyone to the bone, ba-dum-bum-ching if one would ever hear it. He pointed his right index finger at a seemingly random spot inside his book. Page 490,558,693,948,586. Naruto Uzumaki, age 16 or was it 17? Damn accountants, using erasers and such to change one's information, the figure muttered to himself. They don't make my job easy anymore like it was ages ago, so many deaths, yet it was much more efficient. HRM. Naruto could only stand there as the bony man looked up the information in his dusty old tome. The bony man only shrugged in frustration. Ah, well, whatever. How you died is what mattered, anyway. The words hit Naruto like a sledgehammer to the nuts. Died. Him, dead. Naruto was dead. He couldn't believe it. He wanted to yell out in agony on how much bullshit it was, but he couldn't make a peep. The bony man looked up from his book, seeing the white figure of Naruto shift from side to side, as if it was having an angry spasm. The bony man only shook his head. Yes, you're dead. Like millions of others have realized. Get used to it. I'm tired of seeing you pesky souls throw such a fit about it. It's not that bad, honestly. Especially when I, Death himself, have to take care of you piles of smoke and souls, yet it only makes my job harder with the higher-ups, the bastard said Death as he scratches his head with a bony-tipped finger. Now, sit still so we can confirm your cause of death. Naruto still couldn't believe it. He was dead, and the Grim Reaper himself, aka Death, is looking up his information. Is this what happens to people who die? They appear in a sea of darkness and nothing and then get looked up like it's some damn bank. The fact that he was a soul didn't help matters either. He had so much to live for. Hinata, Kakashi, the old bat of a Hokage. He was dead and he probably would never see them again. Ah, yes, your cause of death. Death said out loud. Naruto snapped out of his reverie, bringing his full attention, grudgingly, to Death. Well now. Seems like you died of major poisoning to the stomach and heart. Good choice. At least in terms of a slow and painful death. You've even had some previous near-death experiences. Too very interesting. Death closed his book with a sharp thump and looked at Naruto's soul. Very foolish of you to drink something that could kill you. I mean, what were you thinking? Something so vile and disgusting looking, and yet, you didn't even think twice about it. When I was your age, back when cavemen and dinosaurs existed, I know there was. Naruto couldn't hear him anymore. He turned him out to try and sift through his own memories. It came back to him now. Pain. He was writhing in pain on his hardwood floor, and the cause had to be that vitamin thingamabob the alchemist gave him. How could he have been so foolish? Why wasn't he suspicious of him from the start? But did it even matter anymore? Yes and no, he wanted revenge, but since he was dead, there wasn't any point. And that's how I ended up getting a horse and a caveman hitched. It was an experience that was insulting and a mental image I'll never be able to erase from my skull. I hope you're happy with the story, cause I'm not. Naruto stared at Death again, his attention finally gravitating back towards the Reaper. Death tilted his head before shaking it in disappointment. Not listening, Well, anyway, you're in purgatory right now. I hope you're happy, because people that normally die get sent straight to heaven or hell immediately. No second chances. However, Death said, walking towards Naruto's soul. There are special cases. Ones that have proven themselves worthy, one way or another, he said, as he poked Naruto's soul where his heart would be. Naruto felt nothing. What? Still not simple enough to understand. Kids these days. Death bent down to eye level, at least where the eyes would have been, before continuing, there's a chance for you to live again. A reincarnation, if you will. This brought Naruto's attention fully to Death. A way to be alive again. There was such an option. If Naruto still had feelings and limbs, he would jump for joy. Of course, he could do no such thing. He settled for shifting his corporeal body side to side. Death nodded. Yep. There is a way just for someone as special as you. You have to complete 2 tasks. The first task is probably the hardest out of the 2. I'm warning you now. Be prepared, for there are no second chances. He closed the book, which dissolved into black smoke, leaving his hands together, palms facing each other. He opened them once more like a book, and in its place was an orb of light. It gave off light similar to that of a prism, rainbows dancing inside, as if trapped. He closed his left hand, and the ball disappeared into his bony clutch. He placed his hands behind his back and shuffled around a little before bringing both hands back in front, each hand a fist. Pick the correct hand, and you win the lifetime of life, I suppose. Naruto couldn't help but think that the skeleton was a few bones short of an actual skeleton. Death was, literally, gambling with Naruto's ticket out of here. But if it was his chance of being alive again, he would have to play along with it. He didn't have much else to lose except the chance at life again. Naruto's soul shifted from side to side, unsure which hand it was in. He had a 50/50th chance, so it was all a matter of luck. Then again, when was the last time he had a stroke of good luck? The more he stared at the bony hands, the more he couldn't decide. That is, until he saw a small glimmer of light in one of Death's hands. There. That hand. Naruto shifted his soul to the right, trying to sign language Death into choosing the right hand. He looked at his right hand, bringing it up in front of Naruto's soul. You choose this one? Move your soul around if you say yes. Naruto shifted around anxiously, confirming it. Too bad. He opened his hand revealing a small, shiny coin. Not the ball of light, you lose, thanks for playing. Despair. That was what Naruto felt at that very moment. He was tricked. That shimmer was a false lead, playing off his uncertainty perfectly. He lost. Plain and simple. He began to disappear, slowly fading into nothing, as the white mist that was his soul dispersed into the surrounding nothingness. But then, he heard something very peculiar. Laughing. Naruto looked up at Death, expecting him to be laughing at his expense. Apparently, he was, but for a different reason. Faha, hoo boy, that gets them souls going every time the all shining the coin trick that was a good laugh. Needed that you're gonna be alive no matter what happens anyway, can't let an opportunity like that pass me by, know what I'm saying? Death said with an amused look. Naruto wanted to kill him now. He didn't care. He just wanted to kill him for mocking his very being. However, being a soul, his options were severely limited to that of either bobbing and weaving or standing still. Oh how he wanted hands and feet just to take care of funny bones. Death stopped joking around and just waved his laughter off. Boo, okay then. Anyway, I believe it's time to get this underway. Ah, that's right. There's one more loose end. It's about your hotel guest that was inside that swirly stomach thingy. A seal, you humans call it, I believe. Naruto looked back at Death. He knew about the nine-tailed beast. Wait, that's right. If Naruto died, then the nine-tailed beast would be dead as well, because the beast was connected with Naruto to begin with. Right. Well, as you can probably imagine, he's dead. You're dead, so he's dead, as I'm sure you figured out. His soul went off to some creature hell, or something like that. We, at the Human Embassy of Death Affairs, don't account for creatures. You can see he's not here with you, and things like that. However, Death paused for a moment, summoning that book off his back with the snap of his fingers, before continuing in a merrier tone. It seems that some of his soul has mixed in with yours, which means an essence of him is still inside you somewhere. I do not know the consequences of it still being with you, but I suggest caution, otherwise kid you're a vacant hotel. You're free. Out of jail, all better in the hospital, no one poking you in the butt with a stick or being someone sexual. He was going on and on and on trying to describe the situation as much as possible. Naruto just stared at a space above his right shoulder, waiting for him to finally stop. Or a dog on a chain, or a stripper bound by a contract, or a rapist who doesn't know what the hell he's doing, or Death realized he was running his bony jaw off as he listed off so many things by now. He shook his head, clearing his throat to grab Naruto's attention. Anyway, in short, you're your own person now. Naruto felt both happy and sad at the same time. He was finally rid of the fox, but at what cost? His death. Inside the smoke, his soul was trying to reason with itself at 100 miles per hour. While on the outside, he stayed ever vigilant. The ultimate poker face, if you will. Death wrote in his book, filling out the important details that were obvious with his mechanical pen. The pen had a skull on top and had a label on the back of the skull with number 1 Reaper inscribed in a flourish style of handwriting. It was kind of funny how Death would have a personal item like that. With the click of the pen, the tip went back inside, and that was that. He made the book go poof with the snap of his fingers. Have a nice trip in your new life, kid, he said while pulling the lever down. What? Before Naruto could do anything, his world started to swirl in place. The darkness looked like a whirlpool with white mixed in, which slowly developed into the entire light spectrum, from the reddest of reds to the violetest of violet. He felt his mist form gravitate towards the center of the spinning vortex. As his soul was sucked in, the last thing he could remember was his soul shifting and turning as all the pretty colors made him lose consciousness, or whatever consciousness Naruto even had to begin with. Everything became blank as all was consumed. Later, in the Everfree Forest. Twilight, why are we in the Everfree Forest? This place gives me the creeps. Because Spike, we need to get a certain kind of mushroom that grows only in this region for Pinkie Pie. But does it have to be somewhere this creepy? And a land with a very loud explosion. The earth shook around a particular purple pony's hooves and her baby dragon's feet, the explosion no more than a few pony lengths in front of her. However, it wasn't just any kind of explosion. It was a big purple puff of smoke and light expanding out as it dissipated out into the air. Twilight Sparkle, a unicorn, and Spike, the baby dragon, slowly moved towards ground zero cautiously, curiosity dominating any other instinct. Twilight, what was that? It looked really dangerous. Spike yelled as he tried to keep Twilight between him and the direction the blast came from. I don't know, Spike, but we need to check it out. I don't know, I'd rather go home. Spike lost his footing, tripping over something on the forest ground. Twilight turned back to see Spike on the ground, covered in dirt, a very displeased look on his face. He immediately got up and dusted off any dirt that covered him. As she checked to see if he was okay, she spotted a particular object on the ground, the very same object that Spike tripped over. She stepped around Spike to get a better look, absent-mindedly knocking Spike over into the dirt once again. It's the mushroom we're looking for, Spike. We found it. She exclaimed with a smile. She turned toward Spike, who stared at her in disdain. What? We found what we were looking for. Next time, watch where you step and you won't get dirt everywhere. Spike opened his mouth in protest before sighing in defeat, not even trying to argue. He grudgingly caught up to Twilight, pressing forward towards the explosion, eagerly wanting to show her up in some way, shape, or form. I thought he said he wanted to go home, not check out the explosion. I'll never understand him. She sighed and raced off toward him. What they saw near the tree line was a sight to behold. There was still some purple smoke lingering around a certain point. The purple fog lifted slowly until a stallion came into view. The light yellow-colored earth pony stallion had a head full of blonde hair that went all the way down to his ears and all the way down his upper back, a mane, if you will. That wasn't the strange part, though. He wore some rather strange clothing, an orange and black jacket with some swirly patches on the shoulder areas. The stallion mumbled. It was very weak, but that meant one thing. He was alive. Immediately, Twilight checked the mysterious pony, looking for any marks or injuries that might be life-threatening. Thankfully, there were none. The purple unicorn lifted the stallion as gingerly as she could manage off the forest floor using her magic. She brought him close to her side and faced Spike, worry plain on her face. We have to get him back to Ponyville. Come on, Spike. Naruto was tired, his eyelids felt heavy, and his entire mind, his body, even his own sleeping, it all felt different. Not in the wrong kind of way, but just different. All he wanted to do was sleep. But even if he wanted to dive into that slumbering abyss, it wasn't happening. Something kept jabbing him in the side, sharp enough to hurt without piercing. He grudgingly dragged his mind out from under the proverbial blankets and shoved it into gear, yawning at the same time. He opened his eyes, trying to make sense of who or what was taking away from his sleep. Everything in his surroundings looked blurry and vague, like looking into a mirror after a hot shower. Blinking more rapidly, his surroundings became clearer. Bookshelves full of books, and more books. It looked like he was in a study, or maybe a library, or just a storage room. He blinked a few more times, still trying to fully wake himself up when the poking began again. Hey, you awake, big guy? You alright? Naruto flinched, not expecting the voice to be inches away from his ear. It sounded childlike. He turned his head towards the voice and froze. Whatever stood next to him was covered in purple scales and had sharp green eyes. Its underbelly, however, was green but still had the telltale scales covering the rest of its body. What seemed to be green fins stuck out at regular intervals, starting from the top of its head, ending at the tip of its tail. A lizard then, Naruto thought, but a weird one at that. Naruto blinked a few times, slightly freaked out by the lizard's appearance, but tried to remain calm, attempting to control his irregular breathing and heart rate. This was not the first time he had talked to sentient animals. Who are you? Some kind of lizard thing, Naruto asked. The purple lizard tilted his head, hearing an unknown language. It held its chin, as if in thought, before sitting down next to the bed. Wait, say that again. Didn't catch that the first time, the lizard said, cupping an ear with his hand. This time it was Naruto's turn to tilt his head in confusion. What was the lizard saying? He couldn't understand a single word. Not a single one of them was Japanese. Or maybe he's just losing his mind from all that sleep he had. He decided to say something just to make sure. I didn't catch that, what did you say? Naruto asked. The lizard raised a brow as he just shook his head and crossed his arms. Oh boy, language barrier, the lizard said. He stood up from Naruto's side. Let's see, the lizard started using his fingers. He pointed at Naruto, then down at the ground below him. Naruto looked at the ground and then looked back up at the lizard. It's telling me to stay put then, he thought. He hesitantly nodded, hoping that was what the lizard wanted him to do. It smiled back, revealing 2 rows of razor-sharp white teeth before running out the door. Naruto just shook his head. Where was he, and why did that lizard speak a language he's never heard before? From what he could tell, the lizard couldn't understand him either, so he was in quite a position. He didn't know where he was nor speak the native language. His only form of contact was with that of a purple lizard. He scratched his head in confusion, only to realize his scratch confused him even more. He felt something hard and rough. He paused. He was using his hand, right? He blinked a few times, not wanting to know what was scratching his head, but he needed to. He slowly brought his hand in front of his face, only to see it wasn't a hand, but a round, circular stub. A horse's hoof, to be exact. Naruto raised both his brows as he twisted his hoof around, examining it closely. He brought his other hand up, and it, too, was a hoof. The color in his face slowly drained away as he lifted up the covers to see what else had changed. This was all a trick, some extremely elaborate it had to be, he thought. He was still wearing his jacket, but that was where any familiarity ended. His lower end had also morphed into that of a horse, complete with a fox-like tail, swaying slightly by itself. Getting out of the bed proved to be an intense challenge, as he became entangled in the sheets before hitting the floor with a solid thump. Extricating himself from the mess was just as hard due to the lack of fingers or opposable thumbs, but given time, he managed. In the corner of the room stood a tall mirror that was taller than he was. He stumbled over to it before freezing in place. "What the hell is this?" he blurted out, shocked beyond all belief. He was a freaking horse. "What do you mean you can't understand him, Spike?" "All ponies speak Ekish," Twilight Sparkle asked, slightly peeved. She was busy reading a book before her assistant barreled into her room, interrupting the peaceful quiet she was thoroughly enjoying. Then again, she did ask him to let him know when their mystery pony awoke. "No, not a word, he keeps saying a bunch of gibberish that I've never heard before," Spike said, scratching his head. "It's really weird, I never heard anything like it." "Well, what did he say?" "He said something like Nandato, and Nanigaida sounds like a sandwich or something. I don't know." Twilight Sparkle closed her book and sighed. None of those words sounded familiar to her either. It was a long trek finding the mushroom for Pinkie Pie, and then, to top it all off, she found a mysterious earth pony at the entrance to the Everfree. What piqued her interest was just why in Equestria would a pony be hanging around the Everfree forest to begin with? Dangerous monsters lurked just within its borders. The situation was bizarre enough until her friends decided to pay her a visit after hearing about how she was dragging an unconscious pony through town. She shooed them all away, stating that she had this situation under control and that she just needed to talk with the strange pony. Now, here she was, babysitting a pony she didn't know, or at least Spike was wanting to know just who he was and why he was next to the forest. She took the book off the table using her magic, placing it back in its proper place among the bookshelves before getting to her hooves. "Let's see if I can figure out what he's saying." Naruto went back to the bed, still stumbling over his new pair of legs before laying back down. Not even 10 minutes had passed since he came, and he was already tired. As he contemplated his next move, he heard footsteps coming from the doorway. He sat up, hoping whoever came through could explain what was going on. Was it the lizard? No, the footsteps were too heavy to be that small. The purple horse with a beautiful purple mane walked through the open doorway. Even her eyes were purple. What seemed to be a horn extended out from her forehead, at least he assumed it was a girl, judging from the color palette and the curves of its face, and on her butt was a tattoo of a 5-pointed star. 2 streaks of color ran down the center of her hair and continued down the tail, one red and the other a slightly lighter shade of purple. What happened next almost made him jump out the window. "Can you understand me?" It spoke. The horse thing spoke. He didn't understand a word, but it spoke. He stared blankly at the purple horse, tilting his head at the same time. "You can't understand me, can you, horse, Thingy?" As she heard the yellow pony speak, she hung her head. "You're right, Spike, I can't understand him either. What should we do, Twilight?" "Maybe." Twilight started to think. There had to be some way to convey herself to the pony in front of her. If words wouldn't work, what else would? Something tugged at the recesses of her mind, struggling to get out into the light. Of course. She remembered reading a book about first contact between the Griffin Kingdom and Equestria a few weeks ago. Princess Celestia herself figured out how to communicate with other sentient species that spoke different languages using a modified telepathy spell. "Hey Spike, could you grab that book on Pony Griffin history? I know I left it somewhere in my study," she yelled down the staircase. An affirmative grunt was heard before, moments later, Spike trudged into the room, carrying the book in question. She grabbed the book using her magic, sending Spike sprawling onto the floor, clearly not expecting such a rapid exchange. Still nonplussed, he muttered to himself as he walked back downstairs, presumably to finish his daily chores. She opened the book, scanning for the pages detailing the spell, before stopping at a seemingly random section. A few seconds later she had the basics of the spell memorized and ready to use. "It's alright, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to see if I can read your thoughts." That's all. Twilight's horn shined with magic as she brought it up towards Naruto's forehead. Naruto didn't shy away, now staring avidly at the shining horn. With a small jolt, her horn touched his forehead, sending a small shock through his body, giving him a slight headache. Twilight closed her eyes, focusing more magic into the spell, trying to probe Naruto's head for any way to communicate. Naruto was a bit scared. Whatever she was doing, something felt off. Almost like an itch on the nape of his neck, or that eerie feeling when you think you're not alone in an empty room. "Can you hear me?" Naruto blinked, his eyes now the size of saucers. "What was that?" "I said, can you hear me? Can you understand me? I'm trying to talk to you through my thoughts." Whoever was speaking, it still didn't make a lick of sense. Now he was just plain aggravated. The headache was becoming more painful as each second ticked by, and he was still stuck at square one. It was the purple horses doing with that stupid shiny horn, he thought to himself. He lifted his front leg, shoving the horse away from his head. That's when it happened. As he distanced his forehead from the tip of her horn, a bright purple line of something was attached to either end. Before he could think about it even more, Twilight opened her eyes in shock, the one solid purple beam of light changing into a bubbling red. The beam of light slowly collapsed in on itself. Then it exploded. The house rocked slightly as the small explosion took place in the library, filling it with red smoke and sending them both into coughing fits. Naruto tried to speak, coughing all the while. "Cough, what the heck just happened? Cough, you darn horse," Naruto said before stopping himself. Something was off. Did he just speak differently? But it sounded all the same to him. Even Twilight tried to speak through the smoke. "Spike, who are you calling cough a darn horse?" Twilight said in the smoke. Spike ran in through the doorway, seemingly unaffected by the smoke, worry written all over his face. "Twilight. Are you okay? I didn't call you a darn horse," said Spike, now slightly confused. As the smoke cleared up and the coughing fit stopped, he could see both of them, wondering what just happened. Naruto actually understood what they just said. His mouth felt different, but he could understand what he was saying too. Did that freak accident have something to do with it? "Hey, I can understand you," Naruto said gleefully. Twilight and Spike went wide-eyed as they saw and heard Naruto talk. I can understand you too," Twilight said with a smile. "Me too," Spike said. But how? What was that weird glowy thing you just did to me? I couldn't understand you before," Naruto asked, curious. "Neither could we," Twilight said. "So how?" I don't know," she said with a frown. "I was trying to read your thoughts, so maybe I could find some way to understand you, but then something interrupted the flow." She trailed off into incoherent mumbling. She didn't know what happened, nor could she explain it. "Maybe your spell backfired, Twilight," said Spike. "No. It couldn't have been, I had it right." Twilight slumped onto the floor, feeling a bit ashamed and refusing to believe it had backfired. She always thought her magic was perfect to the T, but that was just wishful thinking at best. Then Naruto spoke up. "If you ask me," he sat up onto his haunches, both forelegs behind his head, "I think that mistake was a rather good one. Now we can all understand each other. I mean, what more could you want?" Twilight lifted her head up and stared back at Naruto. He sported a magnificent grin, rivaling that of Pinkie Pie. She found herself smiling back. "Really? Believe it?" Twilight shook her head, a blush slowly invading her cheeks. "Well, thanks, I guess. It all worked out after all." Naruto nodded, satisfied that she wasn't sad anymore. One crying girl was enough. "I do have one question though." Twilight looked back, brow raised. "What is it?" The blonde pony scratched his head with his own hoof, still trying to get used to the odd feeling of no fingers. "Where am I?" "Well, you're in my house, the library section, to be more precise. You know, it's full of books, novels, and poetry amongst other things. I mean, where else could you be?" Twilight giggled. Naruto scratched his head with a hoof. He paused, bringing it back down in front of his face to get a good long look at it. The feeling still threw him off. It made him nervous. So, he was in a library. Made sense, but that wasn't what he wanted to know. "Actually, that's not what I meant. What was your name again?" Naruto asked, slightly embarrassed. Twilight smiled. "Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't even introduced myself yet. I'm Twilight Sparkle," she said, as she put a hoof on the lizard's head, "and while we're on introductions, this here is Spike, my #1 assistant." Her gentle patting evolved into a small noogie on the purple lizard's head, which he batted off almost instantly, looking slightly aggravated. "Hey, I'm not just some assistant, I'm a handsome dragon who gets all the ladies." There was a brief silence as Naruto stared at the purple dragon, a single sweat drop rolling down his face. Did he just call himself a dragon? He asked himself. Naruto merely shook his head, trying to get his brain back on track. Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, I think. he nervously stated. What a weird name, he thought. Spike sounded normal enough, but Twilight Sparkle. Was that her first name or was that a combination of the two? He didn't know. Twilight wrinkled her brow. Naru, Twilight enunciated, trying to sound out the odd name. That is a rather strange name. Sorry, but I've never heard of such a name or pronunciation before. Yeah, I guess everyone finds my name a bit strange. He never understood why his name sounded strange to everyone he met. Maybe she just thought the pronunciation was weird. He just shrugged. It's my name, though, so. Oh, of course. Don't take it the wrong way, I just. No, of course not. Another awkward silence. That is, until Spike spoke up, tugging on Twilight's mane. Why are you so quiet, Twilight? I thought you'd be bombarding him with questions by now, Spike whispered, glancing back at the orange pony. I'm thinking, Spike. It's not often we have a foreign pony over for a chat, Twilight whispered back. Naruto tried to speak up. He still had questions that needed answers, and the sooner he got them, the better. Yes, Naruto, right. Yeah, just exactly where are we? What country am I in? What city is this? Where's the nearest ramen shop? You know, the important things. Twilight looked at Naruto with a mixture of understanding and confusion written on her face, the latter mostly at his last question. She giggled quietly before standing up and motioning towards the door with a hoof. In that case, let's head down to the living area. I'm sure we can find the answers to your questions, either through me, Spike, or the library's books. Besides that, I have a few questions of my own that I need answered. I sense a mutually beneficial trade in the foreseeable future. Naruto couldn't disagree with that. He didn't know where he was nor how he arrived here in the first place. It was a good opportunity. As he followed Twilight down, he kept stumbling, still not used to using 4 legs instead of 2. Twilight raised a brow as she turned her head. You okay? Yeah, just give me a second. I'll have my walking mastered by the end of the day, believe it. Twilight blinked, confused by Naruto's strange answer. In the living area, Naruto sat down on a comfortable 2-seater couch, a brown wooden coffee table in front of him, while Twilight and Spike sat across from him on a similar couch. Spike was leaning back, relaxing, having just gotten back from making tea for every pony. Twilight poured herself some tea before sipping from the teacup gingerly. In Naruto's eyes, she looked sophisticated. The times he'd dealt with sophisticated people had been far and few between, mostly having dealt with nobles and royalty. The clatter of teaware brought his attention back to the present. So then, Twilight said, putting her front hooves together, what exactly do you want to know, Naruto? This was as good a time as any. There were so many questions that required answers that trying to choose one was like forcing him to say what his favorite flavor of ramen was. Needless to say, that was impossible. However, he needed to start somewhere. Might as well start with something blunt and direct. What am I? There's always a thing when it comes to Naruto's first question. It was always a doozy. Twilight's face stayed neutral, although slight twitching was evident around the eyes and mouth. Eventually, she responded. You're kidding, right? No, I'm not. Believe me, it's going to get weirder, haha, Naruto said, chuckling awkwardly. He didn't know why he thought that was funny, but he needed to laugh at something. This was all too surreal to be just a dream. Twilight rubbed her chin before shrugging and continuing on as if nothing had happened. Well, we're all ponies, or if you want it scientifically, equus caballus. There are 3 kinds of ponies. For starters, she said, gesturing in Naruto's direction, are you an earth pony? Out of the 3 species, you are most in tune with the earth and nature. Now I'm a unicorn, as you can see by my horn. Twilight tapped her horn with a hoof a few times for emphasis. You at least know what a unicorn is, right? Naruto nodded. Indeed, he had heard of a unicorn before, at least in fairy tales. He used to sneak into the bookstore now and again to read. That is, unless he was being pelted with rocks and slandered by the other villagers for being a Jinchuriki. Those were dark times for Naruto. Very dark times. I've heard what unicorns are, but I never thought I'd actually get to meet one. Twilight looked slightly taken aback. Wait, you mean you have never, in your entire life, seen an actual unicorn? Naruto nodded in confirmation. Twilight just grew more confused and irritated. You mean, for Celestia's sake, were you born yesterday? Maybe I don't know where I am, what I am, and I certainly didn't have these hooves before, he said, waving a 4-hoof around for emphasis. I had fingers and feet, like that lizard thing has. He pointed at Spike, who straightened up and pounded his chest with a clawed fist. Hey buddy. I ain't no lizard thing. I am a dragon. Try calling me a lizard one more time, I dare ya. Geez, calm down. Big baby, Naruto said with a smirk. Spike simply looked at him with scorn, picking up a piece of random paper and setting it alight in front of Naruto's eyes. Naruto looked at the pile of ash at Spike's feet, gulping, before saying, "Who can breathe fire at will?" Twilight's head spun at Naruto's answers. The only pony who confused her to such a level was Pinkie Pie. Even then, it was Pinkie Pie. Her crazy shenanigans were extremely frustrating to figure out. Even her analytical skills proved useless against the force that was the Pink Menace. She chalked up everything involving the pink pony to just Pinkie Pie being Pinkie Pie. No explanation necessary, but for a rather normal Earth pony. She leaned forward, placing her hoof on Naruto's forehead, trying to see if he was delirious from a fever. It made Naruto flinch, apparently not expecting physical contact. Twilight furrowed her brow, trying to feel for anything out of the ordinary. "Are you sure you're alright? Fever? Headache? Nausea?" "No, I'm fine." Naruto waved her hoof off of his forehead, but as he did, he realized what bugged him about the touch. His Konoha forehead protector was missing. He looked around frantically, hoping to see a glimmer of steel anywhere in the room. "Twilight, was I wearing a headband with a plate of metal on the front?" Naruto asked. Twilight widened her eyes, as if discovering something previously undiscovered. "Yes. That's right. Your headband. Spike, you know where it is, don't you? Could you grab it from my study?" she said, as she nudged Spike with her hoof. "Me? Why?" he grumbled back in response. "I need to talk to Naruto more." "You're not doing anything else after all, are you?" Spike grudgingly nodded back. "I'm relaxing on the couch. It's more important." "No, it's not. Go grab the headband, Spike." Defeated, Spike got off the couch and started the march up the stairs to her private study. He mumbled under his breath, mostly incoherent with a few tidbits about how much of a slave driver Twilight was. Naruto just snickered to himself, enjoying Spike's annoyed reaction. Twilight coughed forcefully, grabbing Naruto's attention once again. "Right then. While he does that, let's continue where we left off. You said before that you don't know where you are, right?" He nodded. "Well, obviously you're in my house. It's a big library of books, but it doubles as my home. We're not actually in the official library section, but the books here are of my own personal collection. I love to read," she said, stretching her arms out to emphasize the amount of books in this room alone. She brought her hooves down before placing them under her chin. "Right now, you're in Ponyville, located in the land of Equestria. Princess Celestia rules over this land, along with her sister, Princess Luna. Not only ponies live in Equestria. Diamond dogs, griffins, dragons, and others inhabit the land. Anything else?" Naruto couldn't help it. He just stared at Twilight, jaw slack, and halfway to the floor. Had he just walked into a fairy tale? He had to ask one more question, at the very least. How high exactly was he? Yet, he couldn't bring himself to ask, still dumbstruck at Twilight's brief summary. It felt like he was dreaming. A dream that he couldn't force himself to wake up from. Twilight frowned, disbelief all over Naruto's face. She got up off the couch and motioned for Naruto to join her by the window. "Maybe a visual aid is in order. Come here and look outside." Naruto got up from the couch and followed her to a glass-paned window. She got up on her hind hooves and pushed open both sides of the window. A cool breeze brought fresh air into the library, its cool touch making him shiver slightly. Twilight looked at him curiously before nodding with her head outside, inviting him to take a look. He took a calming breath, preparing him for what he was about to see, before sticking his head out the window. He almost immediately fell back on his ass, simply dumbfounded. He closed his eyes while shaking his head, trying to process what he just saw. "I'm hallucinating. I've finally gone crazy," he thought. He decided to take a gander one more time, just to double check. Outside, it was a clear, sunny afternoon. He could see people horses all around, or ponies, as Twilight had said, going about their everyday lives. He saw one sky blue pony in a heated argument with a merchant over what seemed to be cherries. A little further away, two ponies were chatting about something apparently humorous as they burst out giggling and laughing a second later. Below, a big red stallion pulled a cart laden with apples, chatting with a smaller pony with a red bow in its hair as they moved down the road. A bright pink pony caught his eye, bouncing around as though she just swallowed a handful of soldier pills and then some. Were all these ponies so damn colorful? Naruto slowly backed away from the window, shaking his head with his eyes closed, trying to wake himself up from this technicolor dream. But no, it was all real, and he was stuck in it. Stuck forever in this world of the unknown. Everything he worked for in his original world, everyone he met, all of his friends meant nothing anymore, but wait, that reminded him. How did I even get here to begin with? Twilight raised a brow at his sudden question. You don't know. Spike, and I found you near the Everfree Forest. What's the Everfree Forest? You're kidding, right? Naruto shook his head. Twilight sighed, rolling her eyes, before continuing. You know, the Everfree Forest. Dangerous place. Tons of monsters that gobble up anything and everything. Clouds form on their own. Plants and animals grow by themselves. We found you sprawled out on the ground, unconscious, by the entrance. There was an explosion and purple smoke everywhere. Weird, now that I think about it, even if it was in the Everfree. His headache came back, thumping away at his brain with a hammer. This was too much. Too much to take in all at once. He needed time to straighten out his thoughts and figure out his priorities. Twilight Sparkle. Can I have a few moments to myself? I need to think about this. All of this is simply overwhelming. Twilight simply nodded. Of course Naruto, take all the time you need. If what you say is true, then this must be a lot to take in all at once. If I was in your hooves right now, I'd have been freaking out a long time ago. Besides, I need some time to think about this as well. She proceeded out the door, muttering to herself. Grr, what's taking Spike so long? I swear, if I catch him eating some of my mint chocolate chip ice cream again. Her voice trailed off as she left the room, leaving Naruto to wallow in his thoughts. Equestria. Ponies. Unicorns. Ponyville stuff that would fit right in a fantasy book, and he was living in it. Hell, even he had been turned into one too. He tried to remember his last few days in the Land of Fire. He thought back to when he had arrived in Konoha after a grueling escort mission. Yajirobe came to the forefront of his memories, him and that straw hat of his. This situation was caused by him. Teasing Naruto about alchemy, giving him that vitamin potion, lying about how it would help him, everything was a lie. What did it get him? A one-way ticket to the next life. His last memory was of excruciating pain and something flat, hard, and cold. No wait. It was fuzzy, but he could recall something else. A black-robed person, going on about how he was dead, giving him a new life, and something about marrying a caveman and a horse. He face-hoofed, feeling very disturbed at what he just recalled. But getting back to his memories in hand, he was given a second chance in life, just not the one he had left. He banged his hoofs on the windowsill, anger coursing through his veins. If he was going to be given a second chance in life, it should have been in his own world, not this world full of magic and ponies. Was this his version of a sick joke? Or was there another reason for it? So many questions and so little answers, Naruto thought. As he started to flesh out other important details, such as the possibility of returning to his own world or if they have a pony equivalent to ramen, the sun dipped below the horizon, darkness blanketing the town. Naruto snapped out of his memories from the absence of light. How long had he been standing there, thinking? He took his hoofs off the windowsill and proceeded to stretch, much like that of a cat. He finished by cracking his neck twice, once to the left and right, before sighing in relief. Turning around, he found Twilight a few paces away sitting down, facing him. She waved at him with a small smile on her face. Hey, are you alright? Yeah, I'm fine, I think. Thinking about things helped me clear my mind a bit, I think. Twilight nodded. As she did, Naruto noticed a metallic sheen on her forehead, right above where her horn stuck out from her head. He pointed at her forehead, more specifically, at the swirling symbol now visible through her hair. Is that my? Twilight blinked. She followed his line of sight to her forehead and tapped on it with her hoof, eliciting a metallic ping sound. She gasped before using her magic to take it off and fold it onto itself, the metal plate facing skywards. Right. I kinda forgot I had that on. I found Spike asleep on my cushion in my study. That baby still tries to shirk his responsibilities, I swear, Twilight said as she rolled her eyes. It was still on my table, so I picked it up to hand it to you. I put it on to see what it would feel like, and she twiddled with her front hooves nervously. I guess I forgot I even had it on. She placed a small bundle of fabric in front of him. At least some things haven't changed, he thought. The metal was polished to a shine, the scratches embedded into the plate stuck out like a sore thumb, souvenirs of past missions and training. The black strap was still as soft as the first day he donned the protector. The icon of the Village of the Leaves embedded into the plate dead center, a constant reminder of his duty as a ninja. He couldn't help but smile weakly at it, knowing that he probably would never see his home again, stuck in this world, or his friends ever again. Regardless, it was a part of him. A part which he would never ever give up. Reaching out with his hoof, he tried to grab the headband, only to realize halfway there that he lacked opposable thumbs. He furrowed his brow and then lifted his other hoof to help pick it up, only to fall flat on his face when his frontal support disappeared. He rubbed his nose in pain, irritation at his new body growing bigger. Twilight was dumbfounded. It really did look like he was born yesterday. She stared at him a few moments more before lending him a helping hoof. She levitated the headband onto Naruto's forehead. Still not being used to the sight of magic, he froze, his eyes watching the protector float onto his head. She wrapped the headband around his head and tied a firm knot in the back. Naruto closed his eyes and placed a hoof on his forehead, the solid weight easing away some unknown tension. He felt more complete now. This headband took him into many successful battles back in his own world. This headband that he received from Iruka-sensei all so long ago. He took a deep breath and exhaled, opening his eyes once more. "Thank you, Twilight Sparkle," Naruto said, smiling. Twilight merely smiled back. "You're welcome to Naruto, and dropped the sparkle. My friends just call me Twilight." "Well, feel free to keep calling me Naruto then." Haha, it only took a little chuckle for the tension in the room to finally break, making them both laugh well into the night. Since Naruto had nowhere to go for the night, Twilight graciously offered him her spare guest room. Naruto didn't want to intrude, but Twilight insisted. Having a pony with no knowledge of the outside world wandering around at night was stupid to say the least. Naruto couldn't believe this show of hospitality. Anyone else would have just tossed him out like the demon he was. As Naruto fell into the clutches of dreamland, Twilight stared at his sleeping form. Despite the confusion and weirdness of this particular pony, she couldn't help but find him somewhat cute. Especially that fox-like tail of his and those whisker marks on his face. The things she could do with "Oh" by Celestia. What was she thinking? She merely shook her head as she retreated off to her own study. In her study, Spike was organizing all the books she used from her last study spree. As she walked in, Spike turned around, books in one hand, the other with a handful of scrolls. "Took you long enough, Twilight. You think you could lighten up on the study binges twice a week? I've re-shelved the entire study at least 5 times this week." Spike placed the books on the shelves and shoved the scrolls into a bin labeled "In Progress." "Are you feeling alright, Twilight? Your face is a little red." "What? No, I'm fine. Nothing wrong here." "Nope." Well, if you say so. Anything else you need done before I hit the sack? My name is calling my name." "Oh. Spike, take a letter. We need to let Princess Celestia know about this. I might as well include this with my friendship report." Spike merely nodded, pulling out a scroll, quill and inkwell before looking back at Twilight. Twilight took a deep breath as she said. "Dear Princess Celestia. It has come to my attention that when it comes to helping someone in need, no matter how strange or confused they are, it is always right to help them out in their time of need, always going as far as making sure they are safe and comfortable. I have found a strange and odd pony near the Everfree Forest. He's unlike any other pony I've ever seen before. It's as though he wasn't born a pony. My first thought was amnesia, but I've ruled that out from our conversations with each other. I am hoping to hear from you soon about this matter. Your faithful student, Twilight Sparkle. P.S. He seems to have a fox-like tail, if that helps at all." As Spike finished the letter, he rolled it up and set the quill back into his pouch. A second later, the scroll went up in green flames, the smoke traveling out the open window and into the night sky. Twilight walked over to the window and looked in the direction of Canterlot, its bright lights visible through the dark despite the distance. "I hope she can help, she always has." In Canterlot, more specifically in the royal castle of the princesses, a white alicorn lay next to a crackling fireplace, trying to fight off the night chills ever so prevalent in the castle. Sporting a majestic multicolored mane that moved as if caught by a slow underwater current, Princess Celestia was relaxing after another hard day's work. She closed her eyes, enjoying the warmth the fire gave her, before a slight popping noise caught her attention. She opened her eyes to find a scroll bearing the mark of her pupil lying on the floor in front of her. A delightful smile grew on her face. After a long day's work, hearing from her pupil on her studies on friendship and such was a treat. She picked up the scroll and unraveled it in front of her, the fire illuminating the entire paper. As she progressed through the letter, Twilight's mention of this strange foreign pony piqued her interest. There's always a first time for everything, she thought. What she found most peculiar about this pony was that he had a tail like a fox. This was something she would follow very closely for the time being. Twilight sat on one of her sofas, an open fiction novel levitating in front of her. Every couple of minutes, she would flip the page using her magic, seemingly engrossed in the book. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Spike making his way through the library, feather duster in hand, dusting off any surfaces. She lowered her book slightly. "Spike, stop spreading dust everywhere. All you're doing is just agitating it." Spike stopped dusting, turned to face her, and crossed both arms. His pink apron really stood out when he folded his arms, the words "Number 1 Assistant" in plain view. "Well, excuse me, Princess. This feather duster isn't a dust vacuum, it's a duster. How else am I going to get all this dust cleared away?" Spike asked, slightly annoyed. She merely rolled her eyes, emitting an ugh sound, before returning her attention to the book in front of her. As if on cue, a crashing noise came from the stairway, quickly growing in volume. She sat up with a start as she saw some pony tumble down the steps. A flash of blonde hair caught her eye as the yellow object hit the floor with a sickening thud. The blonde sat up slowly while shaking his head, trying to regain his bearings. Darn it, it's even harder to walk on steps like this, the blonde said. Twilight put her book down and trotted over to him before offering a hoof. Naruto, are you alright? Asked Twilight. Naruto looked up at Twilight and nodded, placing his hoof on hers to help himself back up. He stretched out each leg before cracking his neck 2 times, once right and once left. I'm good. These steps are nothing, he said as he turned around to face the steps, pointing at them with a hoof. You hear those steps? You haven't defeated me yet. I will beat you someday, believe it. Twilight's face went from that of concern to confusion almost instantly. She blinked a couple of times and smiled. Well, you're certainly more energetic than you were yesterday. I'm glad to see that. Naruto turned towards Twilight sporting a sheepish grin. He certainly did feel better after all that thinking and a good night's rest. It wasn't very often he was shown such hospitality, even in his own world. That line of thought brought something very important to the forefront of his mind. By the way, Twilight, this place is called Ponyville, right? That's right, she replied with a firm nod. Any interesting places around here then? I mean, Naruto started. He gestured at the room with a free hoof. Your home is pretty cool, so I'm really curious to see what it's like on the outside too. Twilight blushed slightly from the compliment. Well duh, of course. There are lots of things to show you in Ponyville. Are you still up for that tour I mentioned last night? Naruto nodded and Twilight smiled once more. Great. Twilight was about to walk out the door with Naruto in tow until she turned to look at Spike. She eyed the purple dragon carefully, watching as he went about his cleaning duties and reorganization of unshelved books. She frowned, mostly due to the fact that he was taking longer than normal to finish. This room better be clean when I get back, Spike. If it is, I might throw in a red diamond for dessert tonight, Twilight said. The dragon froze when he heard her say a red diamond and found himself drooling almost uncontrollably. If anyone appreciated jewels, Spike definitely did. Well, at least his stomach did. He snapped out of his daydream of ice cream and jewels before snapping into a militaristic salute. You can count on me, Twilight. Naruto and Twilight found themselves walking down the main street of Ponyville, a cool breeze whisking past them bringing with them a plethora of different smells. Flowers and freshly baked bread were the most dominant in the air. Ponies were out and about, some idly standing around enjoying the great day, while others were in a rush to get to where they were going. Rustic houses and small gardens lined the street, each garden filled with vegetables, flowers, or a dazzling combination of both. They passed by what seemed to be the market area. Market stalls stuffed to the brim with a bunch of different goods lined the square, each with a pony advertising their own goods. Ponies meandered around stall to stall picking up what they wanted, their wallets slowly growing emptier. From first glance, it was a pretty prosperous town, reminding him of the ones he passed through when he traveled through his world. It made him slightly homesick, but he would get used to it eventually. Twilight noticed Naruto's expression and stopped walking. Is something wrong with Naruto? Twilight asked. Naruto stopped as well and looked at her. Oh, nothing. It's just I didn't notice before, but the air here it's so clean and fresh and it feels peaceful here. Naruto said. Twilight tilted her head at this, but still gave a cheery smile. Well, feel free to breathe whatever air is around. It's not going anywhere soon, she giggled. This made Naruto chuckle. As he did, a small gurgling sound came from Naruto's stomach. He looked down embarrassed as he scratched his head with his hoof. Hey, guess Mr. Hungry down there doesn't like the fact I haven't eaten since yesterday, he said with a sheepish smile. Any place to grab a bite to eat around here? I'm starving. Sure, I know a nice sweet shop around here that we could go to. Would that be fine? I'm feeling a bit peckish myself. A sweet shop. When was the last time Naruto had any sweets? It didn't sound too filling, but then again beggars can't be choosers. Lead the way. Haha. As they continued walking down the street, something caught his eye. It was a house of gingerbread complete with graham crackers, icing, cherries, sprinkles, and gumdrops. He hadn't seen anything that amazing before. He stood there in awe, his mouth slightly drooling. He looked at Twilight, the corner of his mouth starting to twitch. Do we have to eat that entire house? I mean, even I have limits, Twilight giggled. Why, of course we have to eat the entire house. Legends say that the first pony to eat it all in one sitting will never have to worry about going hungry ever again. Twilight said sarcastically. Aha, very funny, Twilight, mocking my hunger like that, he said with a chuckle. In response, his stomach gurgled again. A slight red blush grew on his face as he walked towards the building with Twilight. This is Sugar Cube Corner. Mr. and Mrs. Cake run the place, and they can make just about anything that includes sweets. A friend of mine even works there, and she enjoys what she does, she said with a smile, but she can be pretty crazy at times. I can't wait to try out whatever they have here then. Although why would you call your friend crazy? Well, you'll see. Inside was actually pretty stylish. Rows of cakes, cupcakes, pies, cookies and whatnot lay on shelves and inside glass cases. It could have passed as a candy shop if not for the cakes on display. As they looked at all the sweets, a high, obnoxious voice came from the doorway behind the counter. "Ooh-oh. Customers, customers. Welcome." A flash of pink whizzed out the door and abruptly stopped in front of them. The pony had a pink coat of fur, hair of even lighter pink, and a trio of party balloons on her flank. Naruto tilted his head as Twilight giggled. "Hey there, Pinkie Pie. How's business?" Twilight said to the hyperactive pink pony. "It's going great, Twilight." Ooh. In yet another pink flash, Naruto found himself nose to nose with a new pony. He flinched backwards slightly, his personal bubble having popped rather instantaneously. However, it didn't stop there. Pinkie Pie bent her head and neck in such impossible ways to examine every inch of his body that trying to follow it all made him dizzy. "Ooh, ooh, ooh. Who's this? He looks like a cat, but maybe he's a cat pony." She poked her hoof at Naruto's face. With a whisker mark she then brings her hoof up towards his ear. And the spiky hair she caught sight of his tail and lunged for it, encasing it in a full body hug. And this beautiful and fluffy foxtail of his. The pony paused, somehow floating above the ground, wrapped around his tail. "Wait, foxtail. Why would a cat have a foxtail? Maybe you're a hee-hee." "No, wait. What Twilight mentioned to him earlier was an understatement. She looked like she was in a constant sugar rush with a handful of soldier pills thrown in for kicks. He never saw anyone or anything move that fast before. Even some of the ninjas back in Konoha couldn't hold a candle to her speed and dexterity. Nonetheless, he felt more uncomfortable every second she was near him, that is, until he heard her call his tail a foxtail. Naruto furrowed his brows in thought and looked back. Now that he stopped to think about it, it did resemble a fox's tail. It was bright orange with the tip a snow-white color. Twilight came to the same conclusion as she gasped in realization. "Hey, you're right, Pinkie. I've never seen a tail like this on a pony before," she said as she leaned in for a closer look. "I wonder why I didn't notice it before. Apparently, ponies have no sense of the term personal space," as she also latched onto his tail. "But it looks so cute." Naruto grit his teeth trying to stay calm. Their touching of his tail sent weird sensations up his spine. It felt extremely weird and invasive. He tried to flick his tail away from the two ponies, but had trouble at first. Trying to control an extra limb you've suddenly acquired takes deliberate thought and concentration, something that he lacked almost entirely. However, his tail compiled and the mare's just awed as it moved through the air. "Personal space," he said, elaborating each word with a hoof stomp on the ground. Anyway, what's so strange about my tail?" He didn't know why he had this tail, but he had a feeling they wouldn't know how he got it either, so he just played it off. "So I have a tail like this? I'm sure others have similar tails, right?" "I don't think so. I know every pony in Ponyville," she said, darting off towards Naruto's tail once more to resume her crusade over its fluff. "And I don't know any pony here that has such a tail as yours. Especially with it being so fluffy." She started pressing against it once more, and Naruto flicked his tail away again, the weird tingling sensation from being touched still hanging around. "See, can we just get our food and go, Twilight?" Twilight looked abashed, bringing up a hoof to cover her mouth. "Oh, right. Of course. Pinkie Pie, you can adore his tail some other time." Naruto squinted at her from that comment, as if Twilight forgot she adored his tail too. "But we'd like to buy some of your cake, if you don't mind." Pinkie's eyes widened in glee. "Ooh. I didn't know you two came here to buy some sweets. Well, what do you and Whiskers want to eat?" Naruto placed his hoof at his nose, as if trying to pinch the base of it, but since he had no fingers, it looked like he had a facet hoof instead. "My name is Naruto, not Whiskers, alright." Pinkie Pie tilted her head, her mouth in an O shape. "Naruto? Sounds like a piece of candy, or maybe a sandwich, or actually, maybe it sounds like a cat." "For the love of Celestia, can we just purchase a couple of cherry pastries?" Twilight interrupted with a shout. Naruto bit into a cherry pastry he had in one hoof, which he learned to curl his forehoof around. It proved to be a challenge, as he was still adapting to this new body and its 4 legs. At least he wasn't falling over every other step now, but that was with 4 legs to support him. With the pastry taking up a leg, the other 3 had to compensate for the 4th's absence. Thankfully, nothing major happened concerning the ground and his face. The crunchy yet moist bread gave way to the delectable cherry filling inside as he took bite after savory bite. Naruto smiled, enjoying every morsel of the pastry to its utmost fullest. As they walked, Naruto started up some small talk to pass the time. "I had no idea that Pink Pony would be so crazy. It's like she's in an indefinite sugar rush without the crash." "Oh, don't worry about it. That's just Pinkie Pie being Pinkie Pie. She's always like that." "Well, alright. As they walked, a rather exquisite-looking building came into view. It was just as colorful, if not more so, than its neighbors, but that wasn't what caught his eye. It resembled something like a carousel out of a noble's festival, rather than an actual building. If not for the door and windows, he would have thought it was actually a real carousel. Twilight followed his line of sight before gasping slightly. "Oh, you've never been to Rarity's boutique here before, have you?" Naruto shook his head at Twilight's question. "Well, let me show you the place. We're good friends, and her store is probably the best place for pony clothes in all of Equestria. Her tailoring skills are top-notch, as she would say." Naruto shrugged. "Alright, sure. Let's go." They both finished off their pastries at the same time before proceeding towards the boutique. As they walked through the doorway, Naruto could see vast amounts of clothes, tailoring tools, and mannequins scattered all around. This was, indeed, a tailoring shop. A small voice drew his eyes toward a snow-white unicorn. She appeared to be concentrating on a mannequin which was on an elevated platform surrounded by mirrors. She was wearing red glasses and had a tape measure hanging loosely around her neck. Her purple hair was styled in such a way that it curled and swirled around itself. "This simply won't do. It needs to be somewhat longer," the white unicorn said, taking a few measurements with her tape measure. She turned away from the mannequin that had the unfinished design and walked to a table with piles of fabrics. "Rarity? Are you busy?" Twilight said, trying to get the white pony's attention. Rarity's head popped up from the table and turned to face her, smiling in delight. "Oh, hello dear. How are you?" Rarity's smile turned into that of absolute horror. Her jaw dropped as she saw Naruto. Her eyes darted all over his body, apparently giving him a once-over to end all once-overs. He froze in place, not wanting to elicit something like the crazed pink pony from before out of someone else by accident. Then her eyes slowly crawled to the back of her head and she collapsed on the ground unconscious. Twilight had already sprung to action, her horn glowing to slow the white pony's fall before catching her in her hooves. "Rarity, wake up. What's wrong? What happened?" she said as she shook her repeatedly, trying to wake her up. Instead of helping, Naruto just scratched his chin, trying to stifle a giggle. "I know I'm good looking, but not that good," Naruto said with a chuckle. Twilight turned and voiced her own opinion at a much higher decibel level. "Stop clowning around and help me, Naruto." After a few more seconds of jostling and shaking, Rarity came, albeit slightly dazed and confused. She groaned, rubbing her head. "Where am I?" She locked eyes with Naruto once again before her pupils became the size of pin needles. That look. The sheer volume caused Naruto to stagger and fall on his ass. Rarity immediately stood up and looked at him repulsively. "Just what are you wearing?" She immediately walked to Naruto and picked up a corner of his jacket with a hoof. This terrible orange color scheme. She then started ruffling Naruto's hair, and that awful hair. "You look positively dreadful, darling. How can you stand to walk around like this? I mean..." Naruto was about to say something about how insulting she was, especially since he loved the look himself, but caught himself when she froze and stared at an area behind him. He followed her eyes and found them fixed on his furry tail. She approached it. Naruto rolled his eyes in annoyance, waiting for the stream of insults about his weird tail as well. However, a familiar tingling went up his spine. He whipped his head around to find the white pony hugging and petting his tail. "Oh my, this tail, it's simply wonderful. Your fashion sense may be horrible, but your tail just screams style." Once again, Naruto had to flick his tail away from another clingy pony, now hugging it to protect it from being assaulted by everybody else. "Okay, what gives? What's with everybody and hugging my tail? That's the third time today," Naruto complained. Rarity backed away a couple of steps. "I'm not surprised, darling. Your tail is simply fabulous. Oh, it's such a shame I do not have something as high quality as that. It would be simply divine." Naruto began to inch his way towards the door. "Well, it was nice meeting you, Rarity, right? But me and Twilight really shall get going." Twilight was still just standing there, an amused look on her face, deciding it best to just watch the proceedings instead. Hearing Naruto's plea for help, however, she finally spoke up. Sorry about that, Naruto. I didn't expect Rarity to," Twilight began, but was interrupted by Rarity. "Oh my, pardon my manners, Twilight, I didn't mean to ignore you. I just couldn't help myself when I saw this mishmash of fashion stroll into my shop. I might have gone overboard just a tad." A tad, Naruto thought, was an understatement. Again, "I'm sorry, Naruto. I should have known better than to surprise her like that. She's normally so reserved and well-mannered. I guess that meeting some pony new like you was just a little too much at once. I kind of noticed what with the fainting and pestering over my choice in clothes," Naruto said in a deadpan tone. Twilight frowned. "I hope you're not mad." "What? Oh, no. Just a little rattled, that's all," Naruto said. So far, today has felt more like a mission gone wrong than an actual tour of the town. Then again, he did manage to meet some of the more interesting townsfolk. A pink pony on an unending sugar rush and a white pony who made the fashion police look bad. It was quite a day so far. It can't get crazier than this, he mumbled to himself. As if on cue, something fast hit him from behind, sending him flying forward before face planting into the hard dirt road. When the world righted itself, he attempted to get back on his hooves, only to find that something was on his back, preventing him from moving. Yes. I found the fox, Fluttershy. I told you I could find him. He turned his head at the voice to find a cyan pony with wings sitting on his back, a smug grin plastered on her face. Her hair would have made rainbows jealous. The pony in question then proceeded to grab his tail, sending that peculiar tingling feeling shooting up his spine again. Hey. What's the big idea, bird brain? Let go of my tail. Naruto growled. The Pegasus raised a brow as she leaned in closer to Naruto. Hey wait, you're not a fox. What did you do with the fox, you fox? Oh great, yet another one, Naruto thought. Oh, no Rainbow Dash, that's not a fox, that's a pony, I think so, said a soft voice. A moment later, a yellow Pegasus with pink hair landed next to them. Naruto assumed that this Rainbow Dash was the one sitting on his back, judging from the visual cues and the name. I can see that. I bet he's hiding the fox so we can't find it. Hey, said Rainbow Dash, poking his head with a hoof, where did you hide the fox? Enough was enough. He flicked his tail out of her grasp and shook her off his back angrily. Once back on all four hooves, he turned to face the newcomers with built-up anger in his eyes. Can't I go more than 2 minutes without being assaulted by random ponies? First it was a pony going all sugar rushed at me, then it was a pony mocking my fashion sense, and now he said, glaring at the blue Pegasus, it's a blind four-legged excuse for a pony who can't even tell apart a pony from a fox. What was that? Rainbow Dash said, slamming her head against Naruto's, who began to press back against her just as hard. Who are you calling blind, you cat-faced wannabe? Oh now it's cat-faced. Are you sure you don't need glasses or are you just that brain dead? Twilight and Fluttershy just stood there, watching the argument unravel in front of them. As their two colleagues kept verbally abusing one another, they struck up some small talk. Neither of them wanted to intrude on a moment such as this, and the tension in the air had reached an all-time high. So, Fluttershy, heh, she said, turning her head towards Fluttershy, what brings you and Rainbow here anyway? I heard something about a fox. Oh, yes, one of my foxes ran away in the middle of the night. Rainbow Dash and I were looking all over Ponyville when we came across you guys. Oh, he must be so scared, I hope he's alright. As Naruto and Rainbow Dash bickered in the background, now on the subject of rainbows and cotton candy, Twilight nodded towards Fluttershy. Ah, I see. Yep, definitely have to find that fox before it gets lost, Twilight said offhandedly, her attention mostly on the two arguing ponies. She pointed her hoof at Naruto. That's Naruto, by the way. He's new in town, or at least, I think he is. I was giving him the tour when we found you girls. Oh, yes, Fluttershy, however, seemed more interested in Naruto's tail than the fight at hand, as her eyes tracked its every move. You want some of this, you piece of cotton candy, Naruto shouted. Who are you calling cotton candy, you? Rainbow Dash shouted back. That doesn't even make any sense. It makes sense to me. He has a nice tail. It looks so adorable, Fluttershy said with a slight blush. Yeah, said Twilight, stifling a giggle. He gets that a lot. After a few more minutes of constant bickering from Rainbow Dash and Naruto, Twilight had had enough of this and forcefully separated the two using her magic. They both yelped in sudden realization that they were no longer on solid ground and began squirming, trying to force their way out of whatever was holding them. Alright, break it up. Let's be friends and stop fighting, Twilight said, looking each of them straight in the eyes. Despite the fact that they were being held aloft by magic, Rainbow Dash opted to flap her wings, giving her the appearance that she was just hovering there. Naruto, on the other hand, just hung in the air limply. Rainbow Dash smirked, savoring this small victory over the orange pony. He noticed his current predicament and just scowled, turning his head to look away from the three mares. HMPH, fine. My mouth is tired from shouting so much. So is mine. Both latched onto each other with icy glares until Twilight walked between them. Look, can't you two just shake hoofs and be done with it? This isn't a proper introduction at all, she said, releasing them from her telekinetic grip. Rainbow Dash and Naruto looked at each other once again, still staring. Naruto squinted, and so did Dash. Second after agonizing second passed by, neither wanting to be the first to back down. Finally, Naruto took the high road and broke the stair first, turning his head down. I guess we got off on the wrong foot, hoof. He raised a hoof. Name's Naruto. What's your name? Rainbow smirked at Naruto, as if his name was the funniest thing she had heard all day. She lifted a hoof and planted it on Naruto's, each doing a quick single shake before withdrawing them. I'm Rainbow Dash, and you're looking at the fastest pony alive. Fastest alive, you sure are pretty fast with your mouth, said Naruto with a small snicker. Why you? Twilight put her hoofs between the two as they almost went at it again. How about we take a break, You can get to know each other later when we're not as busy as Rainbow Dash, don't you and Fluttershy have a missing fox to find? Rainbow Dash nodded at Twilight before looking at Naruto with disdain. We'll meet again, you can bet your mane on it. Rainbow Dash took off into the sky once again with such speed that she seemed more like a cyan blur than anything else. Fluttershy took off as well, albeit at a much slower speed, before waving at them and trailing after her friend. Naruto rubbed his head lightly as they continued their walk through town. It had been a long day and it wasn't even time for dinner. Is life here always this random? Always admiring other ponies' tails and tackling them when they least expect it? Naruto asked Twilight. She shook her head. Not always, but it's not every day that some pony, as unique as yourself, comes to town. What do you want to see next? Well, said Naruto in thought. Ahead in the distance, Naruto could see a large barn up ahead. He squinted, trying to get a clearer picture of the building. It could be a barn for animals, or maybe it was a house shaped like a barn. His curiosity was piqued. He pointed at the barn with a free hoof. Well, how about? Twilight. Naruto. Emergency. A purple dragon came running around the corner towards Twilight and Naruto, panting and sweating. I've been looking all over for you too. You need to come back to the library, quick. Why Spike? What's the matter? It's your house, Princess Celestia is there. Twilight felt her jaw drop. Princess Celestia is here. Thanks for watching my video and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description, see you next time, till then sayonara.